Hello, everyone. I am your host, Alejandro Colindres. Welcome to Series 2 of the podcast, The Road to Champagne, 13 tested principles to drive your career to success. This podcast series will benefit professionals that have room for growth in their career, especially young professionals. In Series 2, we are talking to professionals with brilliant careers in different stages of their journey to find out how the 13 principles have helped them. You can see the framework of the 13 principles in the website roadtochampagne.com. I told you we would be hearing from professionals in different stages of their career, right? So far, we've spoken to some senior folks who are making tremendous progress in their career, some in the executive suite. They had great insights for us. Today, I want to swing the pendulum a bit and talk to people in the center of my target audience, young professionals who are getting started and have so much to figure out. I was there at some point. So what we will do is talk to a recent college grad, one with plenty of potential, who is in her first job. I want to know how she's approaching the application of the 13 principles and what are the key questions she needs answers for as she starts driving her car on that long road ahead of her. If you are in her shoes, you must be intrigued. If you are way past that part of your journey, you will want to hear what the new generation is facing nowadays. Maybe things haven't changed. There's only one way to find out. Let's do this. I am very excited to be joined by Sasha Matera-Vatnick. Sasha studied food science at Cornell University, where she was president of the Food Science Club and graduated just 1 year ago. While at Cornell, she interned with Chobani and with Molino Cañuelas, a milling facility in Argentina, where she is from. She grew up in Washington, D.C. We met through a Cornell networking event. She joined Cargill as a food safety, quality, and regulatory associate. In her free time, she enjoys traveling, working out, cooking Asian and vegetarian dishes, and trying to expand her list of new activities. Sasha, welcome to the Road to Champagne podcast. How are you?
I'm good, Alejandro. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for accepting. So Sasha, let's start with a very general question. Tell us a little bit about your career, even though it's just getting started. How did you choose your major? What are you up to? Give us the scoop.
Yeah, so as you said, I graduated from Cornell University last year in May 2020 with a major in food science and a minor in business. And you asked about how I chose my major. So my interest in food actually began in high school through a biology class and learning about nutrition also on my own, given my personal interest. And then when I was trying to choose a college, I knew that I didn't want to dedicate my career to telling people what to eat and what not to eat. So then I did some personal research, and food science came up as a possibility when looking for colleges to apply to that had food-related programs. And contrary to popular belief, food science is not the same as nutrition.
Yeah.
Through my research, I found out that different career paths open up with a food science degree beyond just a single nutritionist path that comes with a nutrition degree. So food science was a major that aligned with my interest of wanting to eventually have a positive impact on the food industry. So I actually stuck with it for 4 years, and here I am. So now I'm actually working at Cargill, as you said, as a food safety, quality, and regulatory associate since August 2020.
Great.
I'm working in an egg processing facility in Mason City, Iowa. And some of my projects, among others, include handling some customer complaints, dealing with allergen validations, Canadian exports, equipment calibrations, facility assessments, among other projects.
That's cool.
As you said, also, I'm just beginning my journey, and I do anticipate staying in the food industry. So currently I'm trying to learn as much as I can on the job. But I know that being where I am now is more of a temporary phase that I hope evolves into something bigger that allows me to further my career, whether it be in the food safety and quality arena of the food industry or another arena. Mm-hmm. I really try to approach every day as a learning opportunity. And the question that I'm currently asking myself is, how can I make sure that I continue growing in my career? Like, where do I see myself growing? So if you don't mind, I will turn it to you. And I have a question. I was just wondering, like, have you always had certainty about what you wanted to do professionally?
Oh, that's a good question, Sasha. And just so the audience knows, I also studied food science. Certainty about my career. I think everybody has a different answer to that, Sasha. And more often than not, the answer typically is no. Of course, there are some people that I know that studied architecture, with me back in those days, and they're still architects, right? Some people studied medicine and they're still doctors. Those are very big commitments that they made, and they have stuck with it. But people that have studied other majors, such as business or finance or even food science, I have seen so many, changes along the way in their career. Some make very drastic changes and some, kind of do small changes along the way, which to me kind of indicates that people are trying new things as they are growing and evolving. And that happens when you start being exposed to new topics, within your role. Oh, wow, I'm very interested in learning more about finance because in this project, I was exposed a little bit to finance. Now I'm intrigued and I want to learn more. And then eventually you start learning more and you figure out you like it. And then you start maybe shifting your career towards a financial route. This is one example. But that is a normal consequence, I think, Sasha, of trying new things, learning new things, and being open to new opportunities, right? And being open to discovering new things that really make you passionate and interested in continuing down that path. So to me, it is very normal if you have that growth mindset that you are open to new opportunities. And therefore, you never really know what you're going to be doing, 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now. To answer your question specifically about me, I think when I was in your shoes, I thought, okay, I want to try food science, right? That's what I studied. But eventually, maybe I would say 3 years into my job, I realized that I was more interested in the business side within the food industry. So I was working in projects that were executing what somebody else had decided would be a good initiative to implement. And I was like, why am I not involved in making those decisions? But those are business type of decisions. And that is when I decided to go to business school and expand my skills and actually kind of dilute a little bit my technical skills. And I continued in the food industry, but now more in a business setting. Obviously leveraging my technical background and expertise, but not fully, because now I am dealing with other functions and other topics. So no, I was not really 100% sure, but I was going with the flow. I was going with the opportunities that came my way, but I was open to learning, hey, what else could I be interested in that I should be pursuing?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really interesting. You say that you wanted to shift a little bit away from the technical skills. And that's actually something that I also realized pretty soon after I started my first job. I mean, I don't regret studying food science, but I kind of wish I had gotten more of a well-rounded education in terms of because I do agree that business comes in very handy. And I'm not saying I necessarily want to go into business. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But very good insight. Thank you.
Yeah. And you know what? To me, going to Cornell and studying food science, one of the bigger things that I learned was not the chemistry of food and things that I gladly forgot decades ago, but I learned how to learn pretty much so that when I go into a new context, new job, new industry, I can quickly come up to speed. And that is something that I had to work on and build as a skill in Cornell in order to succeed and have good grades. That skill helps me to this day to perform well. So you will find out very soon, Sasha, that as your career starts progressing and many of the things that you studied hard at Cornell start fading in your memory because now they're being replaced with new knowledge, you're going to realize that the discipline, resistance to high pressure environments, your ability to learn, to appreciate diversity, those things are actually going to stick with you throughout your career. The technicalities of food microbiology, if you decide that you no longer need to go down that path, that's fine. You are prepared to learn new things and evolve and grow as you mature in your career. So be open and don't be frustrated if you don't feel that you have certainty, because I can tell you it's normal. A lot of people don't have that certainty up front. And even if you ask me right now, hey, Alejandro, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? I could probably give you an answer that has 80% certainty, but not 100%. I'm open to things that I haven't thought of right now. And I think that's the mindset that we should have, right? Where would those awesome growth opportunities come from? Maybe it's in a different industry. Maybe it's in a different country. Maybe it's in a different company, a different function. So as long as you have transferable skills and the willingness to learn and adapt, you should be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for your insights. This is very helpful.
Yeah, Sasha, and I don't know if this happened to you because, you're new into this first job. So I just want to say, when I went into my first job, I was feeling like, oh my gosh, what happened to my last 4 years? I don't even remember anything that I can apply right now. Maybe I was an exception. I don't know if that has happened to you.
Definitely. I can totally relate to that. I feel like I couldn't have said it better myself. But yeah, I feel like what did I do the last 4 years? That just wasted time? But no, I definitely like gained new skills, maybe skills that I don't realize I gained or that I'm not aware of, but because they're just part of me right now. But definitely, I can relate.
Okay, that's good. I don't feel alone anymore. Sasha, so of the 13 principles, which would you say are the three that you believe you have the best grasp on? How have they brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I would say that the first principle is always be WIP, or work in progress. And as you mentioned in your book, this is an attitude triggered by your mindset. So I believe that I'm always looking for new ways of learning and discovering new things. And like, I'm very aware that I'm not done transforming myself. There's tremendous room for growth. And I'm currently in that stage of my life where I'm wanting to grow. I'm wanting to figure everything out. I do see already some growth since starting my first job. And I'm saying this from a professional and personal perspective.
Fantastic.
For example, I've shown curiosity in terms of learning like what goes on in the warehouse department, because in quality assurance, we work a lot with warehouse, but that deep understanding of what is going on behind the scenes is not really required. I'm definitely curious to learn more about what happens or what is happening behind the scenes to try to understand the big picture.
Definitely.
Another of the principles that I believe I have the best grasp on is know yourself. Mm-hmm. I consider that I do have a pretty high emotional intelligence, or EQ. Obviously, I'm not at like the point where I've reached my peak emotional intelligence, if that's even possible. But again, this is a work in progress. And It's something that I built through constructive feedback from my boss during my internship at Chobani, and then professors as well, and then books I've read, and also conversations I've had with close friends, and just my general interest in understanding my emotions and other people's.
That's great.
In terms of also knowing myself, I'm well aware of my weaknesses, and I'm aware that I need to focus and leverage my strengths better. And part of this is being more confident in my abilities.
Yeah. Sasha, and you bring up a good point that I just want to reinforce. The fact that you have pretty good performance in this principle, but it is relative. It is good performance for somebody in your shoes at this stage in your career. But if you compare to Sasha 10 years from now or 20 years from now, your level will be much higher. And also what is expected of you as a leader will be higher, right? So like you said, it's always work in progress. You might be good right now, but you need to continue to evolve it, because the demands for that skill will also be higher as you are maturing in your journey.
Thank you for reinforcing that. And then going back to your question, Alejandro, the third one I think would be stick to your values. Mm-hmm. Something that had the biggest contribution to my values as like what they are today was my parents, or how I grew up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just what they instilled in me. And we can go into talking about values, but that's a whole different conversation. And I know we're focusing on the 13 principles. So
yeah, but that's a good point. Your parents, the context that you grew up in, your mentors as you were growing up, they all have a big influence in shaping your values.
Definitely. I believe that having a moral compass and just exploring like what matters the most to you through personal reflection is something that will stick with you forever. Mm-hmm. Throughout my time at Cargill so far, I've realized that I do certainly identify with Cargill's values. And then in thinking about my next step, values and sticking to my values is something that I'm very much considering, whether this be like staying with Cargill or with another company that also has values that align with mine.
Exactly. Yeah, that's important for sure. So Sasha, let me turn the question around and ask you, which of those principles of the 13 do not come naturally to you, forcing you to put extra effort and attention to them? How are you trying to improve?
So one of the principles that doesn't come as naturally is aiming outside your league, because I personally have a tendency to limit myself based on what I believe I'm capable or incapable of. Mm-hmm. In other words, I have a tendency to underestimate myself. I am aware that women have a tendency to do so.
Yes, actually, Sasha, you bring up a good point. And I'm thinking about the conversation that I had with Chris a couple of episodes ago. He also brought this up. And you're right. There are studies that have shown that women typically put more restrictions or limitations around themselves than men do. For example, if applying for a job, the woman will feel confident to apply for the job if she feels that she checks almost 100% of the boxes. I'm going to make up a number, but maybe 95% of the boxes. The guy will check 65% of the boxes and say, oh, wow, I was born for this role. So there is that level of boldness or assertiveness. So what you're saying, Sasha, is common, but you have to first acknowledge that, okay, I'm facing this, self-imposed restrictions, limitations that are in your mind. That's the only place where they exist that you can start to eliminate out of your mindset. First of all, you already have gone through two great filters in your career. You first were accepted in Cornell and you graduated, and now you're accepted in Cargill, which is a leading food company. So that should give you right there a boost of confidence to say, wow, these are pretty good high targets that I have achieved. So not only are you starting to build a track record, which is some logical arguments to say, hey, that mentality you should debunk because you are on the right path. You already have success in achieving high goals. But two, for the audience in general, if you are facing that, what I tell myself is, hey, I prefer somebody else to tell me no or to try to tell me no than for me to say no to myself. Focus on what you have achieved as evidence that you can achieve big things. And if you haven't yet, you're starting earlier in your career or you haven't really tried to aim high, try it. I mean, the worst that can happen is that you fail at it. But if you achieve it, you're going to take your career to a whole new level.
Very interesting, because that puts me straight into my second point, which is I'm terrified of failure. I feel like I'm putting this pressure on myself, and I'm also letting the pressure from society to have a linear journey towards success dictate this for me.
Yes, I think, sometimes we put pressure on ourselves and very high expectations. Our parents, our professors, our friends, or we start comparing our trajectories versus our peers, and you start putting that extra pressure on yourself. That's normal. However, you should not let it go beyond what is healthy, meaning, there are some risks if you put too much pressure on yourself. Let me specifically talk about your fear of failure. So the way I look at it, Sasha, is that when you are attempting something big, there's two outcomes, right? You either achieve it and you pop the champagne, it's a celebration, you just made it onto the next league, or you fail. But what happens if you fail? You just went through a process that you wouldn't have otherwise if you would have just aimed for the normal goal. You exerted more creativity, more energy, more effort into achieving that goal. You did not achieve it, but many lessons are now in your pocket. And with those lessons, you have more wisdom to either try the same goal again or try another goal that is equally ambitious that you are better prepared for because of those lessons that you just acquired. So to me, when you attempt something big, something outside your league, it's only a win-win situation. You will either win what that new league offers you if you achieve it, or you will win some new lessons that you wouldn't have otherwise that are going to make you wiser, stronger, better. And if you look at, for example, let's talk about, applying to a great Ivy League school, and you think, well, I don't know, I don't have all the right numbers, the GPA, the scores, etc. What's the worst that can happen if they say no to you? Okay, so you lost the whatever $100, $200 of application fees and some time and effort that you put into it. What's that? That's nothing. It's not the end of the world. So sometimes I think we overreact to what that failure represents. And if we try to minimize it, like I just did for that application example to, I'm going to lose $200 and hours of effort, it's not a big, scary thing to deal with.
Definitely. And I feel like at this point in my life, just not knowing exactly what direction I'm headed in makes it that more challenging to figure out what I want to focus my efforts on to be able to know where I'm aiming at. Because a major part of this principle is knowing exactly where you're aiming at.
That's true. But what I would say to you, Sasha, is focus right now on this new stage that you're in, right? In this position at Cargill. Learn as much as you can. And that means, honestly, it'll take you some time, maybe, a couple of years at least. And then once you get to that point where you say, hey, I'm not really learning as much, that's the time when it's time to consider your options. And when you consider your options and you start looking at, hey, what can I do? Then it's more of a what I would call a theoretical scenario analysis. What are the pros and cons of these three routes that I have in front of me? And once you assess that, the answer will come. Don't worry about it now. Worry about performing, learning, and expanding your skill set where you are right now, because you just started. And then when that right time comes, I think you will know what is the best path given the alternatives that you have in front of you.
And I think in addition to what you said about performing and learning along the way, I think if I also focus on becoming more comfortable with the idea of failure, allowing me to become less risk averse, maybe even trying to say yes more often, as you say in principle number 4.
Yes, correct. And I think failure is also something, Sasha, that as you mature in your career, people will want to know, hey, what did you learn out of your failures? Which means that people expect you to have failed. The question is, how did you deal with it? How did you grow from it? So expect failure. It's normal. It's going to happen. It happens to all of us. We attempt something, it doesn't happen. We think we're going to go this way in our career, and eventually there's a turn that takes us in a different path for whatever reason. It's not all going to happen the way we would want it to happen. And those moments of failure can give you a lot of wisdom, a lot of maturity, and prepare you for bigger things.
Absolutely. Going back to your question about which principles don't come as naturally, I would say also that the increasing power and influence principle is something that I need to put more effort into. And especially because I'm new to the organizations, I'm picking up more and more on the power dynamics at Cargill every day. And it's not something that comes naturally since I'm new to this real working world.
Yeah.
And yes, I might have been the president of the food science club in college, but it's not the same at all.
Of course.
I'm very aware that there's tremendous room for improvement. And as you said in one of our previous conversations, that the more I grow, the more I'll need to increase my power and influence. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is work on my assertiveness just in everyday interactions and focusing on the room for growth that I have in terms of leading people and managing situations. Mm-hmm. And also, I think as important, if not more important, is building self-respect for myself so that others can respect me for who I am and what I stand for.
Yes, for sure. And Sasha, you're right. This principle is one that you are going to continue to refine throughout the years. Right now, you need to start learning it, but it's going to become more critical as you become more senior and you start leading more people and dealing with more influential people, your peers, etc. This is something that actually even I need to get better at. The 13 principles exist not because I master them, but because I think that is what we should all strive to improve. And that is one where, like you, Sasha, I think I also have room for growth, even though I've read many books, taken classes in Kellogg and Wharton. So I have a pretty good knowledge. There's always extra room for growth. And, it only comes through practice and studying it and refining it. And that takes time. That takes decades. You're not supposed to be a master at it right now, but you need to start paying attention. You need to start learning. And you need to start developing the skills to strategically navigate power dynamics within your organization.
Yeah, Alejandro, thank you for sharing that, because it's definitely comforting to know that you're also struggling with these principles that you wrote about. So thank you.
Yes, I did not write them because I mastered them, but it was the output of a logical problem-solving effort that actually has taught me a lot. It's like, okay, now that I know this, how do I apply these lessons and continue growing in my career? So, Sasha, given that you have recently hopped in your car, so to speak, you started the engine and you started shifting on this long road ahead because you're starting your first job. What are the top areas of concern that you have where you wish you had more guidance?
Short answer, my main concern is not achieving success. And as you say at the beginning of your book, your definition of success isn't necessarily someone else's definition of success. So personally, I'm defining success as finding happiness from a professional perspective and from an emotional perspective. So from a professional perspective, I mean having a positive impact on the food industry, as I mentioned at the beginning, and finding the balance between the two.
Sasha, that's good that you have a good definition of what success is to you so that you can start working towards it. Don't expect it to come in your first job. It might not even come in your third job. It might come later in your 30s, 40s. it is a long road, like I just mentioned, right? So it's about how do I start preparing myself for bigger things in my career, right? It's like stairs. Like, how do you keep going up in your career? Not necessarily just in a hierarchical position, but from a knowledge perspective, how do you keep increasing and expanding your scope of knowledge? And then you will be in a better position to achieve your success. Make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself right now. Right now, you're not at the stage where you should be successful checking all the boxes, right? You would be like super fortunate if that happened. It's more around how do I start building the basics. I define success as enjoying what you do, being great at it, enjoying where you do it as an organization, where you live, and having financial freedom, right? And in my early stages of my career, I did not have all of those five. There was sacrifices intentionally made in different variables, like living in cities where I didn't want to live, or being in a company where I didn't see myself for the long run, working in a function that I didn't really enjoy, but I knew that it was going to give me certain skills that I would find useful going forward. Those things are not going to fall into place immediately, right? But I like that you are clear about how you define success. And it makes sense. It's a balance of professional success and personal success, right? Your relationships and all the satisfaction that you can extract outside of work. And I think, Sasha, again, you're starting well. You're working for a great company. You have a great role where you can learn a lot, and you have so many possibilities in front of you. So you're in a good spot.
Thank you. And going off of your definition of success, I definitely think I haven't achieved success because I am definitely working at a company that I identify with. I love the company I work for. I'm currently very much enjoying my job, but I'm living in Iowa and definitely not my favorite place to be, but it's a trade-off. So I know that I want my next step to be in a city because that's just where I thrive. I've grown up in cities all my life and it's where I want to be. And I know that, but it's been great to have the experience in Iowa.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you might not be enjoying it now, Sasha, but I think it's going to increase your adaptability. Just living in a new city, adapting to it, then moving on to the next one, adapting to it. That's how you start building the adaptability that we talk about in principle number 5. Not only from a city perspective, but also, the corporate culture, the type of stuff that you do, etc. So that's good. Hang in there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I would be lying if I said that these haven't been the most formative months of my life. So, and I know that's not minor. So I have an idea what I'm building towards, but I know I'm not there yet, but that's okay because I'm only 23.
Yeah, thank you for making me feel old.
No.
That was uncalled for.
It wasn't my intention. Sorry.
All right, Sasha. So I'm going to give you the mic and let you ask me a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Alejandro, how do you motivate yourself and keep your eyes on the prize or on your quote unquote champagne on days when you're not feeling at your greatest? Because we're all human.
Yeah, so, that's a good question. There's a lot of things there. I'm going to try to be brief. I think, first of all, that we all are going to have not so great days. It's kind of like a portfolio, right? If you even look at a month or a year, there's going to be awesome days and crappy days and everything in between. For whatever reason, a meeting did not go well, you flopped in a presentation, you did not sleep all night, whatever, you weren't feeling well physically. So just know that that's normal. You're going to have days when you're not really performing as you normally do. What I do is I just put a reality check to say, hey, this day will be over in 8 hours. So tomorrow I'm going to have a fresh start where I can hopefully start with my right foot and have everything going on, for me as I wish. But then during the day, to keep focus and try to not make it a wasted day, I try to remind myself of what my daily goals are. What do I need to accomplish today, independent of my mood and how I'm feeling, right? So I try to achieve those activities for the day. And the other thing that I try to do is not let my emotions, if I'm feeling, negative for some reason, contaminate the atmosphere around me, right? I don't want other people to be uncomfortable because they are around me because I'm exposing them to the way that I'm thinking or my problems or whatever. It's not about putting on a mask and acting when you're at work. It's about being professional and behaving in a professional manner, even if you don't feel like it. It's about treating others with respect, independent of your mood, having the right conversations and helping other people when they ask you for it, even if you don't feel like it. Obviously, it makes the day a little longer because you're putting some extra effort making those sacrifices to perform as people expect you would. But I think it pays off, because if you don't, then you might start eroding your brand. And we talk a lot about brand in the second part of the framework. So don't let those off days start eroding your brand value. You have to protect it. That's what I would tell you, Sasha.
Very valuable insight, because that's definitely something that I need to remind myself of every day.
And that's where the emotional intelligence kicks in, right? People that are emotionally intelligent will perform in those situations, even if they don't feel like it, while other people will explode, will yell, will treat others, disrespectfully, etc. And that shows.
Absolutely.
Sasha, so each of our audience members is on their journey to success, trying to get to their champagne. What advice can you offer professionals starting off in their career or about to, so that they can have a more efficient drive to success?
So in just a few words, soft skills are as important, if not more important, than your academic abilities. This is something that I realized after having graduated from college. College is not the same as the real world, but there's definitely things that you can do in college to start helping you build your skills to be proficient in the real world. For example, I recommend start building your leadership skills. Focus on relationship building. That is incredibly important. You're going to be dealing with people every day of your lives.
Yeah.
Prioritize relationship building. And also, emotional intelligence is very important. I think it should be prioritized more than it is.
Fantastic advice. Sasha Matera-Vatnick, thank you for joining me today and for sharing how these principles are starting to work in your journey.
Thank you for having me, Alejandro. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Sasha, for making me feel old again. Yes, thank you.
Very uncalled for.
I wish you the best of success. You are off to a great start. Thank you for sharing your insights. I just wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
You can contact Sasha via LinkedIn. Remember, everybody, you can and must take action to start unlocking the power of the 13 principles in your life. Let's meet again in the next episode. I have another inspiring guest for you. Thanks for joining me, and cheers to a more efficient journey on your road to champagne. Hey, if you missed Series 1, I encourage you to listen to it. It explains the foundational principles we are discussing in Series 2. Like this episode? Please share it with your friends, colleagues, and classmates, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to visit roadtochampagne.com and join our mailing list, and to follow Road to Champagne on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram,